Hello friends, my name is RagePanda1 and today by popular request, and by that I mean one person, we are going to be reviewing Maxroll.gg's Lich build guide that they have put together for the leveling purposes. Now I'm excited to get into a little Reaper form and I have never tried it before, so this will be brand new for me. Looks like we're going to be focusing really heavily on poison and I find that to be pretty exciting. And there's a cool low life mechanic that might get me killed several times if I don't know what I'm doing. So that'll be interesting as well. They do have a lot of things in the pros section that I have liked in other builds. Easy gearing is a good one because I tend to go solo self-found until I get into monoliths. We've got tons of regen, great damage, and a very consistent playstyle, and I do like all of that. Makes it a lot easier to make a video when we're talking about one build instead of 4 of them. Some cons though. We're gonna have limited mobility, and we're gonna have to deal with the low life playstyle, which can be stressful for some. I don't think it's gonna be too stressful for me, but I don't think we have to worry about that until around level 40. They are going to be using what I consider to be the best skills that you can possibly use for the early game. And of course, that is Wandering Spirits. I think Wandering Spirits is crazy good, just wildly overpowered in the early game. And we're going to do Rip Blood for some sustain. And we're going to pull out our Golem boy, and you know that I love him so much. Until the later part of the game where he stops being quite as good, but at the beginning he's awesome. One thing that might be important to note here is that it says on bosses use Bone Curse for extra damage. And I do think that a lot of people would just see the button on their bar and they would assume that they're pressing it every single time to get the clear. You probably don't need to do that. Just if somebody is being very tanky and you're tired of their stuff, then you can go ahead and throw a Bone Curse on them and you'll quickly turn them into a fine bloody mist. As per the usual, we are going to transplant across the map as fast as we possibly can. You've always got a movement skill on your bar in this game and you're always crushing that button until you break your keyboard, mouse, or controller. I'm excited to see that in our final setup we are still using Wandering Spirits. I like that. I think the move looks really cool. I think it's fun to use. And we're going to be spamming Spirit Plague as well. We're going to go into Reaper form and then we're going to just do some crazy shenanigans with Death Seal and hope for the best. There is a special note here that if you're not using Reaper form and Death Seal properly, then the ramping of this build will not work properly. So you got to make sure that you get that part right, and if I've come up with any tips along the way, I will be sharing those with you in the later parts of the video. We will be respecking a couple of skills in this build, but other than that, I think the respecking is fairly minimal, and that's pretty cool. One of the only build guides that I've seen where it's either before getting your mastery or the final setup. This build, once again, by the way, was made by Tarek, and I am not sure if he did all of the leveling guides. Maybe he did, but this guy seems to know a lot about the game, and so every time I see his name as the author of the guide, I'm excited to try it out and see what we get into. And for whatever my opinion is worth, if you're looking for somebody to listen to about guides, I think that he makes some really good ones. Still, I do think that the gearing sections are a little bit where it leaves something to be desired. They're split up into level sections, and I just don't feel like it really works that way. What I would rather see is, for instance, on here they want me to be using this root staff, and they want me to put certain things on it. We're going for poisons here, so damage over time, poison damage, chance to apply poison, all of that sort of stuff is going to be great. What I really would like to see is just give me a list of base items. That's all I care about. I don't need to know what level range I'm in. I'll see that when you show me the naked base item in the guide. I think that'd be a lot more useful, and then I would know, okay, now I'm this level, I can start looking for this weapon or this pair of gloves or whatever thing is actually important. And for some slots, it's not going to matter at all. When you get to level 58, for instance, you get access to things where you're getting a ton of resistances, like on a bone amulet, and I want to know that I need to look for that if I'm a new player. Sure, a lot of the veteran players and people like me with hundreds of hours in the game are going to know that they need to go for those items when they get the opportunity to do so, but specifically with these leveling guides, I think we should do it a different way. And lastly, I'll mention that we have poison damage and damage over time listed at the same level of importance here, but I also think that there's a danger that some people might look at this and see poison damage and damage over time is higher than cast speed. That means I'm not going to worry about cast speed at all. I'll just try to get the other stuff. I think that would be a mistake. I think you want to get a little bit of each thing, and we're just talking about weights here. So maybe if I have 3 of them that say poison damage and damage over time, maybe I'm looking to get 2 of them that say cast speed, and it's going to be hard to get more than that anyway. Maybe I'm looking for 1 poison penetration in there. It's not that one is just always better and you don't need the other ones. You do need them all. It's just the amount of them that you need is a little bit different. I'm going to skip a lot of this early game part until we get a specialization because we've already seen almost the same thing in the previous guide for the Acolyte, and I would like to respect your time as Yes, I will be naming my character Lich my buns, and I don't care who knows it. There is a bit of an oddity here with the pre-specialization portion of the guide. It says to use Rip Blood and then replace it with Spirit Plague. And then down here, it says to respec Rip Blood for Reaper form and then put Spirit Plague in the third slot. Now that doesn't initially make very much sense. What they're failing to tell you is that you're going to get your mastery around the time that you're unlocking Spirit Plague anyway. It's pretty close. It's never going to be exact. I got Spirit Plague before the mastery. You might get it after. It just depends on how much stuff you're killing along the way. Should you respec Spirit Plague while you're using it before you get your mastery? I think sure, you should respec it and put a couple points in Spirit Plague and use that. It's going to be better. It's going to be a little bit stronger, and your gear should be supporting that if you've been following the gearing guide, where that doesn't really apply to Rip Blood all that much. However, if you have done that, if you switched into Spirit Plague and you specced into it to replace Rip Blood, like this says that you should do, then when you get to your final setup and you get your mastery, you want to respec Spirit Plague into Reaper form, and then you'll put Spirit Plague into the third slot when that becomes available. The reason for that is because the points in Reaper form are more important than the points in Spirit Plague. So, I don't know, it's a little bit weird. I'm only level 14, I think, right now, and it's going to be a while before I get my third slot, so that's what I'm going to do. I respec'd into Spirit Plague, and now I'm going to respec out of Spirit Plague into Reaper form, and just go with that until level 20. Hope that helps somebody, because it took me a little bit of thinking about it to understand what they even wanted from me right here. This is another situation where we're starting in the passive tree of a different specialization than what we actually chose. We're going to be going in Warlock and picking Spiteful Decay to start off with. We're going to go into our Lich form, pop our Wandering Spirits, and we are going to use our Reap ability, which comes after we use our Lich ability, and we can use that as a dash to just keep moving around. So we want to just keep moving as fast as we can move, and we can use our potions to extend the period of time that we get to be on here. We get a big guy like this, we hit him with the Bone Curse, and then we just go to town. And we actually, since we're level 20 now, and we are specced into Spirit Plague, you can only have the one stack of Spirit Plague on somebody, but with our points that we have inside of here, we can put 3 stacks of poison every time we cast, and we can keep recasting it to keep adding those poison stacks. So that helps to add in a lot of damage, and that's kind of what we're doing when we're in single target situations. Otherwise, I'm just hitting one Spirit Curse, Wandering Spirits when I can, and I'm moving. I stay moving. That's how we get our levels. As far as a boss fight, it's going to be much the same. I'm going to just get the curse up, do everything we need to do here, and we're just cranking it. And you can see the poison stacks are just going super high. Well, maybe not super high, but kind of high. We're trying to keep them stacked up as much as we can with those, because we're getting a lot of damage from it. Most of our damage, though, still Wandering Spirits, as you might expect. But this build actually is very safe, and it does a lot of damage. It feels a little scary sometimes, because you're going to be taking a lot of damage, and that can feel bad. But, you know what? I think it's working out just fine, and I think it's a fun and interesting build that's a little bit different than what I normally would play. Whenever I'm in one of these dungeons and I'm looking for the door to the next place, I just play like a trailer park girl and go around the outside. Around the outside. Now it's boss time, and we gotta go burn up these roots and do a bunch of damage to them if we can, which I'm gonna save my Wandering Spirits for when some other dudes start spawning, and we're gonna just try to be careful and live. Finally, we've come to the end of our trip into the Warlock tree, which has been quite extensive before we've even put anything into Lich, but it's a very good play, and the reason is because we're starting off with increased damage over time. That's the whole thing that we're trying to do, and we're doing more damage over time to cursed enemies. We're using a curse in the first place to get our damage over time. That's huge. These 2 points are just because we need a couple of points to move forward, and then these 5 points for the extra poison chance. It's not worth it just for the poison chance, but with the 5-point bonus, it's a really good point that we're trying to put in here. That's why we're stopping at 5 points. We're not going to keep putting them in all the way to 8. We just stop at 5. We get our buff. And you're going to notice they do that a lot in these skill trees. They're going to go to the most essential parts of the tree to get as much of these extra bonuses as they can possibly do. And they're doing that with the skills as well. Now that we're going into the Lich tree, we're going to go for Apocrypha, and that's going to just give us some more mana and mana regen, which I haven't noticed as being a problem, but maybe these other ones just aren't really worth it. The build does continue to be quite exciting and fun, however, it is more of the same, so there's not a whole lot of new stuff to show you about it, but as we keep going on here, I have been having a really good time playing this one. And for the most part, when I'd use these guides, that is how I feel about it. So I'm excited to get into the monolith phase and see how we're doing at that point. I'm sure it's going to be pretty nasty, judging from what I've seen so far. We are coming up on the classic Admiral Hearton boss fight here, and I want you to keep a lookout for the giant fart cloud that is definitely going to be happening once we get enough poison stacks up on this guy. It is, there it goes. It just goes through the whole map, and it is a pretty cool little effect they got going there. One of the biggest and prettiest effects that I've seen just from something on a regular passive tree. I'm a fan of it. So this build is doing a ton of damage, obviously, as you can see, and we're really happy with that. It's very easy to use. It doesn't sound like it's easy to use, but it is pretty easy to use, and you just have to not worry. If you get a green health bar, consider it a free life. Like, it doesn't even matter if your life runs out. And you can use that if you're on low health to trigger to save your own life, and that feels pretty good too. Feels like a little bit of an extra skill that you can develop to keep yourself alive, which might be fun in hardcore. It might also make you panic if you're not used to being almost dead while you're playing hardcore. So I could see why some people might not like that. So I got my resistances all maxed out and we went into our first monolith. I was surprised to find out it took less than a minute to actually finish this first monolith. That's partially because of the monolith that we rolled, but also because this build is extremely good at doing what it does. I have unlocked the Aura of Decay, so that's a little extra poison damage that we get to do, and we have like 300% damage over time and some extra poison damage all built into our build, as well as all the defenses that we need. So we're well on our way to having a really good time in monoliths, and let me tell you something, I'm excited for it. I was worried about this build. I wasn't sure I was going to be liking it that much, and it's not going to change at all until we hit level 40-ish, until we get our Death Seal, and then the playstyle is going to be a little bit different, and there's going to be a bit of adjusting that we have to do. It wouldn't be a last Epoch video from Rage Panda 1 if we didn't do something a little bit nitpicky, and that's exactly what we're going to do right now. I don't understand in my Wandering Spirits tree, they want me to get all of these points, that's great, that makes sense, and then they want me to put a point up in medium, which gives me cast speed, so that I can get to Eternal Haunt, which gives me reveal duration, and it adds to my cooldown. I understand why that's good. Like, if you're fighting a boss, you want to be able to kill them in one use of Wandering Spirits, and if that helps you do that, then that's really good. But what's not on the tree that I've seen is Infectious Dead, which changes my necrotic damage to poison. Everything else I'm doing is poison. I'm stacking a ton of poison damage. In fact, in my build, I got pretty lucky here, and I have this Occultist's Toxic Spine Rod, which gives me an implicit damage over time, as well as 284% poison damage. Now, I've left the necrotic damage on here for now, because I haven't decided if I'm doing that point or not, but I think that I'm going to put the point into this poison damage and then try to make that necrotic damage into another damage over time, which would make my stick even stronger. And if you can have a strong stick, then you're doing the right thing or something. I don't know. It just seems like it makes sense that we would make this poison damage since we're intentionally scaling all of our poison damage anyway. I think one less point here. We're talking about 1 point. Is that 1 second gonna make that much of a difference compared to the 400% poison damage that we got? I just don't think so. So it seems to make sense to take that for me. It is going to take a long time for me to get this Death Seal active, and I guess that's okay. I'm just gonna have to level it farther than I normally would, but I feel like I have to test that because they're considering it a significant part of the build. However, I did want to mention a couple of things. In monoliths, if you're not leveling your pets as your main thing, the golem sucks. He just dies right away. It's unfortunate. We're sticking with him for now because that's what the guide wants, but he's not very good. Also, when you have your Aura of Decay, you are taking damage from that. That's just how it works. They have some things in place to help mitigate that, and that's great, but I found a pretty good solution that just means you can leave it on all the time, and you don't ever have to worry about it, and that is ward per second. So I have some of that on my chest, I have some of that on my head slot item, and I can put on my Aura of Decay, and I'm pretty much fine. It will eventually eat through the ward, and that is what it is, but then it'll slowly even out, and it's not such a big problem. If I didn't have that, then it's actually kind of annoying to have this active, and you're making yourself get hurt way too often for a build that's already pretty squishy, to be honest with you. This one would probably be making me pucker up a little bit if I was playing on hardcore. I just don't know if I would want to do it on hardcore. But maybe Death Seal fixes that, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And before I said that we want to be using Reap for movement, that is very true. We do definitely want to be doing that, but I should be very clear in saying we want to hit as many people as we can hit while we're using it for movement. I didn't say that before. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear because it does give us health back, and that's one of the ways that we're sustaining being in our Lich form. So that's important and I didn't want to miss it. We finally got Death Seal and we're going in to do the last quests now, and I gotta tell you that Death Seal is a little bit uncomfortable. They say that right in the guide, but it is true. You're at low health for a long time and it doesn't feel good because you can't heal past what you started at. And we're taking a node that makes it so we only have a third of our health every time we press the button. However, I felt tanky enough while I was doing it, to be honest. I even felt tankier than I normally was before because you get some damage reduction included in the skill, and the damage that you're outputting is pretty dang high. And I was getting poison stacks like crazy at this point. I did have some unique on that was making me summon the vines that are normally for the Spriggan, for the Primalist, and those also do poison, so that was helping in my build. I had to switch off of a Spine Rod, which I really didn't want to do because it's such a good weapon, but I did have a Serpent Mace, and I had an offhand that had some crazy purple rolls for poison damage and damage over time and ward per second, and it was keeping me alive through some of the issues that I was having with keeping up my aura of decay. So how is the build? Is it fun? Is it good? I gotta tell you, it is very fun. It's very exciting to play. Your health is going up and down. It feels like a Blood Death Knight in World of Warcraft, where like, if you have the answers to the damage that's coming in, then it's a really great time. But if you run out of answers, it feels really bad. I do think there could be something to be said about having some potion find on this one, because if you're picking up potions, you're getting back extra time to be a Lich. Now, you can't extend it infinitely, but you can stay in there for a pretty long time, and that does help. What you don't want to do is run yourself completely out of potions just to try to keep it up. Now, if you take a big hit early in your Lich form, then potion up, and that's good. It keeps you alive, keeps you in the game, keeps you in the form. But when you're out of Lich form and you don't have your Death Seal, you just feel a little vulnerable on this one. So maybe you take it a little slow when your cooldowns are not available, and when you've got what you need to be able to really go in and hammer it home, then you do the thing. I did notice that I was clearing echoes super fast on this build, just super fast. Even though you're not using a real mobility skill, you get to keep moving, and you're applying poisons for free, and you can just apply a whole bunch of poisons with 1 or 2 button presses, as well as your Spirit Plague, and it spreads and kills everybody, and it feels really good. And the poison explosion that you get from the Warlock passive tree also feels really good. I think this build looks really cool. It's got a great theme. It's a fun, different way to play. It doesn't feel like every other class, and if it looks interesting to you, then you should definitely play it. And I just wanted to mention something about preference here. Whatever you think is cool is cool. Do you remember the things when you were a kid that you thought were awesome? Those are the things that are really awesome. Don't let other people shape your opinions. I know there are some of these builds that I don't love, and I'm not having a good time with them. And there are other builds that I'm really loving and having a great time with. What you should do is you should listen to your heart of hearts, and if it feels like it should be a really fun thing for you, or that you at least want to try it out, then you should listen to yourself, because you get to decide what is your favorite thing and what you're gonna have fun with. And that's the beautiful part about a game like this. There's so many varieties of builds and play styles and everything that you could do, and you can't go wrong as long as you're having fun. Personally, I had a great time with this build. It did a lot of work. It did a ton of damage. It was super fast even without the movement skill, and it wasn't a complicated build to follow along with. We weren't doing too many crazy respecs or anything like that. They had the one thing where you're supposed to switch to Spirit Plague, but they don't really explicitly tell you what to do in that situation. But that's a very, very minor thing, and either solution that you choose is going to work just fine. If I were going to take this build into the end game, I'd be starting to look for a bunch of cooldown reduction so that I can get my Lich form and my Death Seal up as often as possible, because when they're not up, it feels bad, and I don't like that, so I'd be trying to keep it available at all times. And I do think that the cast speed becomes more important than the extra damage. If I could have gotten some purple affixes with cast speed instead of just all the purple ones with extra damage, that's what I would have taken, because I want to put more stacks on people and I want to do it faster, and I think that would have added to more damage than just having the pure additive damage. It's good, but it's not like the be-all end-all. I would much rather be scaling into higher stacks, especially for the boss fights. So for the people who are looking for hate, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I got nothing but good things to say about this particular build, and if you want to play a Lich, by all means, please try this build. It's a lot of fun. And if you had fun watching the video, then I will invite you to like and or subscribe and do all the YouTube things that you know help out my channel. We're just getting started here in the world of Last Epoch, and there's a lot more to come. For now, I want to thank you for watching. I have been RagePanda1, and I will see you in the next one.